Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Without further delay, we're now linking up with our Abuja studios to speak with our Arise Director of News and Politics Editor, Sumner Sambo, for an appraisal of the political arena as the presidential contenders continue to deal with peculiar circumstances facing their campaign efforts. Good morning, Sumner.
Good morning, Steve, and good morning, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you. This beautiful Sunday morning. Well, let's get right into the politics of the day. And I would like to start, on this note. We know that it is campaign season, but then it's looking like what INEC did, is it the best for the political parties and the candidates, giving them by the new, new act of the INEC, almost 5-6 months of campaign. And we can see that from September for the presidential candidates and October 12 for the governorship candidates and the House of Assembly, it's looking like the sort of verve, the sort of activities that we were expecting, that a lot of Nigerians were expecting, we're still not getting it. And rather, it looks like we're going back to what we had in 2019 and 2015 and before, whereby it's only the last 3 months of the elections that you will have quality activities in terms of political rallies and campaigns. Is there already like a rally fatigue? And do you think that what INEC did was the best, in kickstarting campaigns 5 months to the elections?
Thank you, Steve. This new direction that was provided by the Electoral Act is something that was actually meant to be good for our democracy. And it's actually good. It's something that was well thought out, because I followed through that process at the National Assembly, right from when there were proposals for the amendment of the old 2010 Electoral Act down to when, of course, the process was concluded. And of course, I had several interviews with the chairman of the Senate Committee on INEC, Senator Kabiru Gaya, on why some of these innovations were brought into the new electoral law. And the idea, the thinking, according to the federal lawmakers, including proposals by INEC, was to actually provide a template that will make our democracy to advance from the Russian kind of campaigns that we had often done in the past. 90 days to elections. Before you know it, everybody will start rushing right here and there. And then, of course, during the process, there will be logistics problems, both for the electoral umpire and, of course, even the political parties will be stretched. So the idea was to do it like we usually have in advanced democracies like that of the US and all of that, so that people, the electorate, will actually have a feel of what the campaign agenda, the manifestos of political parties will be like. But of course, Nigerian politicians know how to circumvent the issues. Now, while this political timetable is good, if you look at the flip side, from the angle of the politicians, you discover that it has to do with election logistics. And when I say logistics here, I'm talking in terms of funding. Steve, you and I know that politicians actually spend a lot in Nigeria. The politics that we play in our developing democracy is actually more tailored towards funding of elections and, thinking that, people don't receive ideas so much. A lot of Nigerians are not receptive to ideas. They are receptive more to politics of rancor, to politics of money. And so that's the average psychology of the Nigerian politician, that haven't understood the voter demography that we have. And then the average psychology of the Nigerian voter, they think that if they are able to stretch their resources for 5 months, they will be able to burn out, gas out before the election day in terms of financing. And then the thinking among some of these politicians that most Nigerians don't usually remember those who started the race buoyantly. It is those who end the race buoyantly that they easily remember. So they are still working within that old psychology that within 90 days, the Nigerian electorate will be more receptive to their ideas, if they do have so much ideas, to be able to, have a grip on the electorate easier. And when it comes to logistics in terms of funding, I can tell you that it's not easy. If you look at the average amount that's necessary for you to be able to go around election logistics of, hiring private jets, hiring canoes, hiring buses and all of that, with the way the country is very vast, you also have to pity them. Look at 2015, for example, when that election was shifted by about 2 weeks. You and I know that the APC had borne out financially within just that 2 weeks. And so they had to go scampering for monies here and there. And it was a strategy by the PDP until they had to quickly rally around themselves. And so if you look at the way the major political parties have been approaching the election, you see that they are very deliberate in starting their campaigns probably from November 25th or early December to be able to meet that 90 days window, and then they'll be able to achieve what they had previously done in the past, and then it will be easier for them to be able to run. But it's left for the electorate to keep pressuring these politicians to be able to drive at what they are putting together. Look at the manifestos. Why are the manifestos coming late? If indeed there was already a room for the political parties to be able to allow their candidates to emerge and then draft these manifestos and then, subtly preach this the content of the documents to Nigerians. But it boils down to the average psychology of the Nigerian politician that everything about the Nigerian is, usually done in haste.
All right, Sumner, I would like to find out from you because some political analysts have actually criticized politicians here in Nigeria that most of the political parties are just made up of an assemblage of politicians who just have one sole determination, which is to get power, and they are not so focused on ideology. And so what we see playing out in our politics is almost inevitable because it's based on the vehicle to power as against the vehicle of ideology for change. Talk to us about this.
So, Aaron, if you take a look at developing democracy that we have at the moment, you understand that since 1999, there had been this attempt to actually have two major parties that will be able to drive the ideologies of, whether you're conservative or you're progressive. And over time, it's been pretty difficult until 2015 when we had this amalgamation of political parties, specifically from 2013, and then they winning election in 2015, and then, all trying to fuse into a big party, which is now the APC. And of course, so we had these two big political parties. Previously, it was almost like running a one-party state, and where you have such a situation, it's very difficult for you to be able to drive through ideology-driven politics. Now, the scenario is beginning to rearrange itself, and gradually the politicians are being forced to actually promote some ideologies, even if some of them may not believe in it. If you look at the socialist ideas that the APC is bringing into play, it's more of like trying to take us back to the 1960s, the First Republic, and then, of course, the Second Republic. But they are still not doing it very well because it's difficult for them to be able to unite together because, like I said previously, they are an amalgamation of different political parties that came together. The one that seems that it has had a standard ideology over time is the PDP. Since 1919, having an open market economy, driving at, putting the private sector at the forefront of their policies, trying to see how they could sort of like try to unbundle the Nigerian society by trying to bring elements of market forces into governance, and then trying to drive at an ideology where the state actually is run by people who are thinking in terms of through the market and not through being socialist or populist policies like the APC had told us that they were doing from 2015. But the reality is that until we have political parties that are able to have a lot of competition, it becomes difficult. If you see how we started our country, in 1960, you will discover that we had at least the larger political parties, the NCNC, for example, on one hand, the Northern People's Congress on the other hand, and then, of course, you have the Action Group on the other hand, and then there were fringe parties. Now, within these three large political parties, you could see ideologies where, for example, the Action Group will tell you that they want to be strong on free education, they want to be strong on socialist policies and all of that, while the Northern People's Congress will tell you that they were playing conservative politics based on especially what the Northern people thought of how the country should be like in a country where they are dominating the political space. And of course, you had the NCNC, which was led by the likes of Nnamdi Azikiwe, telling you that, look, the people who were more progressive in terms of trying to bring new ideas, fusing. But when the political realities dawned on them after the elections, you could see that there was a sort of attempt to merge. And where did the NPC merge? They actually merged with the conservative NPC. And the thinking then was that the NCNC and the Action Group, talking about Obafemi Awolowo and Nnamdi Azikiwe, had the best sort of coalition that should have led us into forming the first government. But of course, you know, because of the wranglings that we had in the southern part of the country between Azikiwe and Awolowo, especially due to the local elections that had happened previously in Lagos, where Azikiwe, you know, using the tool of the NCNC, had gained some sort of majority in Lagos, but the Lagos establishment, the Yoruba establishment, they don't want someone from the southeast to want to take charge of politics from that angle. And so that caused problems leading to 1960. And so it was difficult for them to be able to form a coalition to become the first government. And so Azikiwe was easily bought into forming an alliance with the MPC, and of course, they formed the first government. And since then, we sort of seem to have been having a very good political alliance between the North and the East. It replicated itself in 1979 again, and then, of course, 1983. But unfortunately, this alliance didn't go well until it started collapsing in 1993 with the emergence of a new political alliance between the North and the Southwest geopolitical zone this time around. And it has continued. But the elements within the political system right now are being forced to sort of want to tell us what the ideology is. APC has been populist driven, trying to see how to bring social investment programs that will bring it more closer to the people. A lot of progressive elements, as they like to call themselves in the APC, had wanted to drive through this policy of free education, but of course the resources are not there. So it's become pretty difficult because of how expensive it has become to actually run elections in this country. For us to be able to have these two big political parties driving at ideology politics. And now here we're having new entrants into the political space like Labour Party, like NMPP, and of course you have African Democratic Congress, and then you have APGA on the other hand. And they are trying to see if they could, in one way or the other, bring about a new sort of politics that's people-driven, that's acceptable by people on the streets. But of course, Nigerians too are making it difficult for some of these politicians who are in these other political parties to be able to, you know, accept their vision. Yeah, we are seeing Peter Obi, for example, of the Labour Party, trying to make a good deal out of it, trying to be closer to the people. But of course, you know that it's still more, he's appealing more to the urban-centered voters. So Nigerian people also have to give room for politicians of ideology to be able to feel that they are embracing the new innovations, the new ideas that are being spread to them.
All right.
When you see a lot of Nigerians also trying to make it look like they are tilting towards the older political parties, the APC and PDP only, then it confuses a lot of people. And the only way we can make this better to be ideology-driven is if the electorate themselves accept newer brides, if you may put it that way. But if we don't, if we keep tilting towards the older political parties, then it will be a challenge.
All right, okay. Let's use this opportunity to remind you of our dear listeners that that 7:30 this evening, the stage is actually set for Arise News and the Center for Democratic Development's engagement with four major presidential candidates, including Bola Tinubu of the All Progressive Congress, Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, Labour Party's Peter Obi, and last but not the least, Rabiu Kwankwaso of the new Nigerian People's Party. Steve, a lot is going to be happening tonight, and
Absolutely.
we're almost setting the ball rolling.
Yeah,
in terms of conversation
Yeah.
with these candidates.
I mean, it's the first of the series, of the presidential town hall series by This Day, and by Arise TV and the partners. And I think that a lot of Nigerians will, be looking forward to what they will have to say, particularly the top 4 presidential candidates, this evening on 2 key, very important subject matters: economy, and security.
Yes,
and I think that we would like to, Sumner, are you there? I think that Sumner would like to say a few things about what is to be expected this evening. Sumner, I'd like to ask you, economy and security will be the focus of the first series, first in the series of the presidential town hall meeting by a Rice Group this evening. What do you think that the expectations of Nigerians will be from the top 4 presidential candidates? Tinubu of APC, Atiku of PDP, Peter Obi of Labour Party, and Rabiu Kwakwanso of the NNPP. What are your own expectations, and what do you think that Nigerians will be looking forward to?
Thank you, Steve. Arise News is actually providing this platform to allow the presidential candidates promote the sort of ideas that will allow the electorate to make the best decision as to who they will want to be the next president of Nigeria. And Arise is offering this platform not just only to these men presidential contenders, like you have said. This is the first of the series, and we are going to have other presidential candidates and, of course, vice presidential candidates coming up to be able to speak to the Nigerian people and talk to them about the ideas, because it's no longer enough to just say you want to be president of the country. I mean, a lot of people will tell you that they pity the next president of the country, because being president under these tough times, it's not going to be easy. I mean, it's not the usual rhetoric. For those who are coming unprepared for this position, they would be facing a lot of tough times. I mean, if you've seen what is going on in the UK with Liz Truss being the last PM to resign, and then you will know that there's a lot of pressure from countries, I mean, the electorate and citizens generally, to want to deliver in terms of the expectations of what is happening within Nigeria and, of course, within the global community. The next president of Nigeria has a lot to do in terms of strengthening the economy. I mean, you can see how much the naira is to $1, and then you can see some of the policies being put in place by the outgoing government to try to cushion the issues of inflation, to try to cushion the issues of corruption. But despite some of this effort, you see that, some very corrupt individuals who just want to sabotage the system. So Nigerians will be expecting a robust debate in terms of the ideas that will be shared at the town hall meetings, because the idea is actually not for it to be a debate where people would actually hit at each other, but to look at a night of conversation. Arise is providing a platform for people to share ideas within the perspectives of a conversation, within a conversational atmosphere that wouldn't be a brickbat situation, but where the presidential candidates will speak to the manifestos, will tell Nigerians the sort of novel ideas that they should be expecting, because we don't need old ideas that will be able to drive us into the future. The old ideas are not going to be working in the sort of country that will be inherited from President Muhammadu Buhari. So the presidential candidates will be provided a space with an open mind to be able to tell Nigerians what the novelty ideas are. For example, the Labour Party is saying that it's going to remove fuel subsidy. Now, if the Labour Party is going to remove fuel subsidy, and the Labour Party seems to be driven by the Labour unions, the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress, which have all opposed the removal of fuel subsidy, how is that sort of policy going to gain ground under a Peter Obi presidency, for example? Or if you go to Tinubu, who is trying to drive at a term percent GDP growth per annum. How is it going to arrive at that, considering the indices being pushed ahead of us by both the IMF, the World Bank every now and then? How are we going to do, how are we going to have a 10% GDP growth? And when you go to Kwankwaso is actually saying that he's going to recruit about 750,000 more personnel into the Nigerian army and, of course, other arms branches of the military, and then, of course, the police. Where is he going to get the monies to fund them from? The economy right now is hemorrhaging, and then you see that our debt to GDP ratio is nothing to write home about. For almost every money that we generate, we are using to service our debt. People are interested in knowing what the presidential candidates will be doing about this. And then you come to someone like Atiku Abubakar. Atiku Abubakar is trying to open a free market economy. He wants to sell the national assets, especially the refineries, to him. There's no reason why we should keep financing the public refineries. Now, isn't it going to land him more into trouble? Because the accusation has always been that he's interested in selling, public properties, national assets to his friends. And so what are the ideas that he will be bringing to promote an open market society if that's what he wants to do? Why should the average Nigerian trust an Atiku Abubakar? So the platform has been provided for them. It's left for them to be able to tell us the novel ideas. But telling us those old ideas that have always been happening or speaking in general terms is not what I think the average Nigerian wants, because the average voter right now needs specifics.
All right, they need specifics, and that I like where you just ended right now, because it will give us the opportunity to probably understand my next question. Sumner, looking at how things have actually played out, we are glad that Arise News is setting the ball rolling with this conversation that will be happening this evening. Can presidential candidates of various political parties shy away from forums like this? Because remember, leading up to 2015 and in 2019, several candidates decided to pull out and refuse to engage Nigerians. What will be the backlash if these candidates decide not to honor not just this forum, but other forums whereby they can engage with Nigerians on what they claim they want to do and what they have actually put out there in terms of their manifesto?
Aaron, Nigerians are not interested in listening to presidential candidates by proxy. And that's why you see Arise News is providing this sort of platform in a conversational atmosphere, not in a debating atmosphere. Because the fear among some of the presidential candidates has always been that it's going to be a debate where there'll be brickbats, people trying to, want to stand against their personality or talk about their personal health issues. I mean, that's not where this sort of town hall meeting is driving at. What we're driving at is an atmosphere of understanding, of speaking to your manifesto. You wrote the manifesto alongside your strategic teams. Speak to us as to what exactly are the specifics that are contained here. And if you don't attend this, then you are telling the Nigerian people that they don't matter, that their votes don't matter. Yes, I know the thinking among some of these, especially big political parties, is that debates or town hall meetings or social gatherings or professional gatherings all don't eventually contribute to the vote. But I can tell you that that is a reclusive thinking. That is the thinking of the past. The Nigerian voter in 2023 is different from the Nigerian voter in 2019 and 2015. And if people think that they are going to use propaganda to be able to will themselves into power in 2023, it's not going to happen again. Because the voters are interested in their personal security, like we've seen with the security advisory being issued right here and there. People want to know what the incumbent government is doing and what the incumbent government is going to hand over to the next government. People also are interested in knowing what the new government that will be taken over are going to do better from the incumbent government. People are interested in listening to the presidential candidate, not in a sort of antagonistic manner, but in a manner where they are able to speak to the man in Kaura Namoda, to speak to the man in Agbo, to speak to the man in Newi, to speak to the man in Yenagoa, to speak to the man down in Bauchi, to say, this is what I'm saying. This is the best way to handle the issue of education. This is the best way to prevent ASU strike in the future. This is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to get money to improve on infrastructure. This is where I'm going to put my energies on in terms of population. Because, for example, we haven't been doing population census. It's been marred by controversies over time. How do we resolve those teething issues? The issues of restructuring, the issues of governance. Government at the center is over-bloated. A lot of people, despite the efforts of this government, starting from Jonathan's period to introduce IPPIS, to reduce the issues of ghost workers, you see that there's a deliberate attempt by some people to sabotage the system. For example, under the APC-led federal government, how could one person be able to manipulate the system, allegedly, to be able to remove 109 billion and, plus, like we've heard, as the accountant general? How do we ensure that the system does not allow one individual to have access to such huge quantum of money? People are interested in knowing the system processes, because it's not enough to just say you are arresting people and name shaming. How do we reform the process not to allow one person to be able to steal 109 billion as is being alleged? How do we ensure that the process of the PIA, for example, that has led to NNPC being a private company now, a publicly owned company now, how do we ensure that NNPC work for the benefit of Nigerians? Are we following the PIA? What are the presidential candidates going to do better? So this is the sort of atmosphere of conversation that we are going to have in terms of borrowing, for example. A lot of people are worried by the APC-led federal government and how it has borrowed. Did the PDP government also borrowed? Yes. What would the Labour Party do better? What will NNPP do better? What will ABGA do better? If Nigerians are able to hear from this candidate, then it provides a sort of atmosphere for the voter to be able to make an informed decision on who deserves his or her vote.
Absolutely, Sumner. You're very spot on there. And I like the fact that you made reference to what was, happening in the UK. If you look at the midterm elections in the US, for example, see the way that former presidents, have risen up for, their political parties, speaking to the ideologies and the manifestos of their party. It shows that they know that the people are interested and things have changed. It is the same in Nigeria as you have explained. But two questions now, Sumner. One is the Nigerian electorate mature to the level that political manifestos can change his or her opinion as to who to vote for? We have seen what Atiku Abubakar of PDP brought out, his 5-point agenda. We have seen Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's and APC's renewed hope. Labour Party and Mr. Peter Obi seems to have downplayed the idea of a manifesto, and instead they believe more in speaking to what they want to do directly and ultimately coming out with a roadmap, as they call it. Do you think that this will be sufficient for the Nigerian voter to make an informed choice, especially now that a lot of people are saying that people will need to vote wisely? And then secondly, Sumner, is to quickly take a look at the possibility of a last-minute alignment and realignment that it looks like is going to happen within the polity. We have seen Peter Obi of the Labour Party, returning to subtle discussions with Kwakwanso of NNPP. Is there any likelihood that something can come out of that? And then we have also seen him in talks with the Wike and the other gangs, and the other 4 governors of PDP, being in talks on the one hand with the APC guys and on the other hand with Labour Party. Is there something in the offing that may likely, tweak the expectations in terms of what will happen in February and March next year?
Thank you so much, Steve. Is the average Nigerian interested in the manifesto of the political parties? Yes, I will tell you. If the thinking within some of the strategic teams of the dominant political parties that Nigerians in 2023 are not going to be interested in the manifestos of the parties, I can tell you that that projection is very wrong. Because, look at it, Steve, in 2015 and 2019, okay, let me just take 2019, for example. We had about 84 million registered voters. How many voters came out to exercise their voting franchise on the day of the presidential election? So putting everything together, both Buhari, Atiku, and all of that, it's just close to about 28 to 29 million out of 84 million registered voters. So the question is, what happened to the balance? Why weren't they interested? The same thing happened in 2015. Despite that surge, you see, how many millions did Buhari use to defeat Goodluck Jonathan? I mean, you could just see it, that the difference was just very few. I mean, everything added combined is just like about 30 million. So now there's a huge chunk of undecided voters who were apathetic about, the political situation, especially in the last election, because maybe noticeably because we had an incumbent. But in 2023, they are interested in knowing what the political parties have to offer, because a lot of undecided voters have decided that they are going to play a critical role in who becomes the next president of Nigeria. So if, for example, we have 30 million in the last election, minus 84 million registered voters, that means there's 54 million undecided voters, people who just decided to stay away. For no cause, of course. You have professionals like soldiers, journalists like you and I who couldn't vote on election day. But think of it. If those people decide to cast their vote in 2023, that will tilt to who is eventually going to emerge as the next president. So the political parties must never make a mistake by thinking that the interest of those people is not going to, manifest. Now we are hearing INEC saying that we would have about 95 million registered voters by the time the voter register is weeded out. Now, if we have that, if a political party is able to, through its manifesto, convince just about 40 to 45 million voters, and those voters key into whatever they are saying, and they are able to get about 35 to 40 million of those voters, I can tell you that will make an inroad into who will eventually become the next president of the country. Those undecided voters are very huge. People who have in the past been apathetic about the political situation are now beginning to have an interest in the polity of the country, because the dollar rate is hurting them, the issue of insecurity is hurting them, the issues of kidnappings here and there, is that you have a family member that paid ransom, or someone who was kidnapped, or the issues of the industrial crisis in the education sector have affected them one way or the other with the elongated ASU strike. Or you have the issues of, lack of the foreign direct investments boosting their businesses here and there. Or, in one way or the other, they are affected. So as a result of that, those people want to have a say on who is going to lead them in 2023. And so the legacy political parties like the PDP and the APC must never make a mistake by thinking that Nigerians are not going to be interested, including the likes of Labour Party and the New Nigeria People's Party. So they must bring a policy idea and stand by those ideas and tell people that, look, this is what we want to do. If we don't achieve this, hold us responsible for this. And then we don't want a situation whereby there are several manifestos, whereby the political parties are projecting one, the candidates are projecting the other, support groups are projecting the other. Just like we had President Buhari ending up being elected and denying some of the manifesto. There must be a single manifesto that speaks to exactly what they want to do to the populace, because the populace are interested in what they have for them.
All right, Sumner.
Coming to the second issue that you have raised.
Yes, okay.
Is there room for an alliance? Very quickly, yes, there's room for alliance. The NNPP and the Labour Party are beginning to understand that there's no regional politician, right from independence, that has ever won a national election. Look at Obafemi Awolowo. He's been touted as the best president Nigeria never had. That's because his base was in the West. which we now call the Southwest. And despite the effort that he made to align with the Middle Belt at some point in time to win the election, it never materialized because you need to be a nationalist for you to win the election. The same thing happened in the Second Republic, and now the Azikiwe too, with the GNPP and all of that. You could see that unless you become a nationalist politician, it's difficult for you to be able to win the election. So alliance will be very, very important as we move. Since they can't do a merger now, it's only left for Peter Obi, for example, and Kwankwaso to see how in the last minute they can merge. But we are hearing that Kwankwaso is tilting more to the APC. And we are hearing that Atiku Abubakar is also trying to see how he can get some fringe parties. And if they do, then to be a death knell for the third force, as they like to be heard. But I can tell you that the best way to upstage the governing All Progressives Congress is if we are able to have the likes of SDP, APGA, NMPP, and Labour Party forming a last-minute alliance, because unless they do that, if it's the same politics that we understand, it will be pretty difficult to upstage the governing APC, because even the PDP itself is finding it very difficult at the moment. And that's why you can see Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is beginning to concentrate more on the northern part of the country, because as it stands right now, it's losing grip on some part of the south. So we're trying to mend fences in terms of the south. He understands that for you to emerge president in this country, you need 4 out of the 6 geopolitical zones. That's what happened in 2011 when Jonathan was in power. He won the South-South, South-East, Southwest, and then, of course, he eventually won the North-Central. And Buhari didn't win because of those indices. In 2015, when Buhari was to win, he won the Northwest, North-Central, Northeast, and then he eventually won the Southwest, losing the South-South and then the Southeast. So whoever wants to emerge in 2023 must have it in mind that he needs 4 out of the 6 geopolitical zones to be able to emerge. And you can't do that if you don't have an alliance in one way or the other. So if APC is getting into alliance, trying to cut the likes of Wike and other politicians in the main opposition party, what gives NMPP or Labour Party or APGA or SDP the confidence that they can win election without reaching out to align with others? I think it wouldn't sit well with even some of their strategies if they don't start working towards an alliance now.
All right, let's talk about the internal wranglings in the People's Democratic Party. I would like to find out from you, are the G5 powerful enough to scuttle the ambition of Atiku Abubakar becoming president of Nigeria come 2023?
Yes, they are. And like I keep saying in previous analysis, it's a reenactment of what happened in 2014. I mean, when those Atiku Abubakar, alongside those governors, had to move out, the likes of Nyesom Wike, Governor Maga Takarda, Wamako, and Rotimi Amechi, and all of that. I mean, if you take a look at the issues at hand here, you will discover that Atiku Abubakar's recent decision to actually go ahead without these 5 governors, while it's a welcome one, nonetheless, it's going to be a very difficult decision. I know that the strategy that they're adopting now is that they will work with some politicians in those states and be able to weaken some of the other incumbent governors. Yes, one of the strategies that they've adopted, which may likely work for them if they have some top PDP chieftains, is if they're able to have an inroad into some strategies. People who had previously supported the likes of Governor Okeze Ikpeazu, Governor Samuel Otom, Governor Nyesom Wike, and they are able to, asphyxiate and isolate the governors, which is the strategy that I think that they are trying to do. Isolate Ikpeazu, isolate Otom, especially those who are seeking senatorial ambition, and see how you can maybe back the opposition to be able to counter them and give them more assignments by keeping them busy trying to fight for their own political life since they want to get to the Senate. And then through that, you displace them and disempower them. Yes, while that strategy may work, nonetheless, the Atiku Abubakar team needs to know that peace costs nothing, but it buys everything. And I will want to repeat that. Peace costs nothing but buys everything. Because if that could affect Jonathan in 2015, who was an incumbent president, think of it. Atiku Abubakar is not a sitting president. he would need the support of these people. Is there any way that he can try to reach out more? I know Wike has been trying to prove difficult, but I won't say that Atiku is not having an impact. Atiku is having an impact even against Wike, and that's why you see Wike is trying to recruit about 200,000 special assistants, trying to put his feet on the ground, because with the people that Atiku Abubakar is working with in Rivers State, the likes of Senator Lee Meba, Austin Okpara, and Celestia Omehia, these are very strong politicians, and Wike himself knows that these people want to sweep him off his feet. Because despite the fact that Wike is trying to sort of form some subtle alliance with the All Progressives Congress, it is clear to Governor Nyesom Wike that APC cannot easily make an inroad in Rivers State, and PDP and Labour Party still remains very strong in that, and that's why you see it's difficult for Wike to be able to come out clearly and declare his support for the APC, because he knows that the APC doesn't have a strong foothold in the state. And then considering the uproar in the APC on what has happened to Tonye Cole and the Rotimi Amechis of this world because of the internal wranglings of the APC, you see that Senator Magnus Abe of the SDP seems to also be harvesting some people in the state. And so with Sim Fubara having crisis, and there's a likelihood that there may be a Supreme Court decision that may stage certain things, whether it does or it doesn't, with the problems that Sim Fubara, the PDP governorship candidate, seems to be having with the APC, with the EFCC, there's a thinking among politicians there that they could actually do something to upstage the political party of Governor Nyesom Wike. And so Wike himself is under tension. So it's left for them to decide whether indeed they want to cause chaos and allow SDP, for example, to harvest from the governorship election in Rivers State, or there still needs to be some room, some backroom channels where the like of Governor Nyesom Wike and Atiku Abubakar can still mend some fences. Because let's be very frank, is it easy for Atiku Abubakar to want to allow Iyorchia Ayu to step down? It will be difficult, because if they set aside a national chairman now, when they are close to the election, it may affect them. But Atiku Abubakar himself needs to provide some promissory notes with some irrevocable standing orders to Nyesom Wike, to see if indeed there could actually be some sort of last-minute alliance. Because if he doesn't do that, I can tell you, like I said previously, if former President Goodluck Jonathan could be affected as an incumbent president and he lost out because of the exit of these governors, what makes Atiku think that he won't be affected? It's already clear to everyone that unless these governors work for him, he's going to find it very difficult, because Tinubu is also cutting these governors. But the governors are also divided. Some of them are thinking of either going to Labour Party. People like Otom and so on have been embracing Labour Party. But when they go there, they also meet a brick wall. Labour Party is a party that's finding it difficult to be able to pull its weight within the polity. For example, it hasn't been able to fill senatorial seats and House of Rep members in several areas. So, and you know that makes it look like a regional party. If you don't have the national spread in fielding offices in several places, who would want to think that big politicians can align with you?